At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. After all, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Larissa. Let's begin. The void that bordered the territory designated anomaly K1984, known pejoratively among Concordance cartographers as human space, was a visible wound, a churning, violent bruise on the structure of reality, a place where the fundamental laws of physics appeared to fray. Gravimetric waves, rogue and untamed, pulsed from within like the erratic beat of a collapsing core. Radio frequencies screamed across myriad channels, a cacophony of unstructured noise that defied all algorithmic decryption. Concordance doctrine, in its stark and measured language, deemed it a categorical mess. Aboard the reconnaissance vessel Quiet Inquiry, order reigned in contrast to the chaos outside. The air cycled through molecular filters, held a neutral scent. The walls, a uniform and calming shade of pearl gray, absorbed all stray sound. The low resonant hum from the stasis drive was the only permissible vibration, a constant reminder of the tranquility defining their existence. Praetor Sentian stood motionless on the command deck. His tall, slender form wore the pale, calcified plating of his species, a biological armor that grew more rigid and smooth with age and discipline. He stared at the main view screen, where the roiling anomaly churned. "Report, Navigator," he said, his voice a low, melodic baritone devoid of inflection. "Field distortions remain erratic, Praetor," came the reply from the pilot station. "Energy readings suggest a phenomenon outside our known catalogs. It is loud." Navigator Kala, designation 4-Theta-9, was younger than her captain. Her plating still held a subtle play of faint color, a sign of youth the Concordance had yet to fully temper into stoic uniformity. She traced the gravimetric tides ebbing and flowing outside, her long hands restless over the console. The exacting art of astrogation, a dance of mathematics and a waltz with celestial mechanics, was a rare sanctioned outlet for individual expression. But here, on the edge of this chaotic frontier, the dance felt more like a brawl, a sharp intake of breath, a shameless thrill sparking within her. "Loud is an imprecise descriptor, Navigator," Sentian corrected, his tone gentle but firm. "Quantify the transmissions." "That is the difficulty, Praetor," interjected Technician Lyron from his station. Lyron was older than Sentian, his plating the color and texture of ancient coral, fissured with the fine lines of countless service intervals. "The signals arrive on a chaotic jumble of carrier waves. They layer upon one another, thousands of them, all broadcasting simultaneously. Music, verbal communication data streams, commercial advertisements for something called glipizide, a pharmaceutical for regulating metabolic sugar, according to the packet data. It is the informational equivalent of static." Sentian processed this. For centuries, the Concordance had sent out scout ships to this anomaly. The mission was always the same: push farther than the last, chart the chaos, and identify the source. Each mission ended in silence, its final transmissions, data records, and wreckage absorbed by the chaotic region. The prevailing theory held that an unknown violent aspect of the anomaly consumed them. A secondary, less popular theory suggested the region's inhabitants destroy them, the soft-bodied bipeds known as humans. The Concordance viewed them as a volatile species that had stumbled upon spaceflight while still lacking emotional and societal equilibrium. "Our mission is clear," Sentian stated, addressing his crew of 3. "We will advance into the distortion. We will maintain passive sensor sweeps, chart the gravimetric currents, and maintain full stealth. We will ignore all hails. We are here to observe, to understand the fate of those who came before us, and to return with that knowledge. Do you understand?" Understood, Praetor. Kala and Lyron replied in unison. "Navigator Kala, proceed with caution. Bring us across the boundary." Kala swept her fingers across her console, guiding the ship with millimeter-level adjustments. She eased the Quiet Inquiry forward. The ship, a blade of polished alloy shaped for silent passage, slid from the calm of Concordance space into the human frontier's turbulent currents. The ship lurched, Its internal dampeners, designed to counteract the gentle pulls of planetary orbits and solar winds, strained against the violent, unpredictable gravimetric shears. The low hum from the stasis drive pitched upward into a strained whine. Alarms, muted and polite, chimed from Lyran's console. "Praetor, the drive is experiencing significant stress," Lyran reported, his voice a flat line of analytical concern. "The chaotic energy fluctuations are interfering with the stasis field stabilizer assembly. It is like trying to calibrate a chronometer during temporal shear." "Maintain integrity, technician," Senshin ordered. "Kala, find us a stable path." Kala's knuckles brushed the console as she gripped her controls. Every path churned with instability. The currents were three-dimensional rapids swirling and eddying around the unseen obstacles. Navigation gave way to raw reaction, her instincts guiding the ship through fissures in space-time just as they opened. A desperate, thrilling improvisation, a counterpoint to the elegant waltz of astrogation. A sharp, unbidden joy sparked within her. So novel was the sensation, she registered it as a potential system error. She suppressed it, her posture stiffening, her breathing evening out into the prescribed rhythm. Emotion is flaw. Order is strength. They pushed deeper into the chaos, the ship groaning in protest. The view screen showed a swirl of gas clouds and the distant, angry glint of unshielded stars. And then, from the heart of a particularly dense nebula of crimson dust, something burst forth. A squadron burst forth. These were brutal angular machines stripped down to their essential components: a cockpit, an engine, and an array of stabilizing fins. Garish clashing colors, violent yellows, electric blues, insolent pinks, adorned their hulls. They moved at speeds that should have torn their frames apart. Kala's voice was sharp. "Unidentified vessels." Senshin turned his head a fraction of a degree in her direction. From the lead ship, a wave of sound so powerful it bypassed the hull slammed into them, resonating through the deck plates. A rhythmic, pounding beat overlaid with distorted electronic shrieks and a wailing human vocal assaulted them. "Highway to the danger zone." The singer howled, the words a blur of alien phonemes, but the aggression was unmistakable. "They are racing," Lyran murmured, his vocalizer glitching for a microsecond as it processed the display's recklessness. "Their gravimetric drives are operating far beyond established safety parameters. The energy wake is..." The human ship's wake cut him off. The fleet of human gravity racers tore past the quiet inquiry, their alien music blaring. They treated the turbulent nebula as a racetrack, weaving through the gravimetric currents with an instinctual, almost careless abandon. The combined stress wake from their passage converged directly on the inquiry's position. The consequence was incidental, like a scout drone caught in the engine wash of a dreadnought fleet. The wave of distorted space-time buckled the ship screamed. The polite chime of an alarm gave way to a high-pitched, metallic shriek of shearing metal and overloaded systems. On the main screen, the universe twisted, colors smearing into surreal shapes. Sentient's plating, for the first time in decades, rattled with the impact's force. The impact threw Kala against her restraints. Her control shattered. From Lyran's station came the sharp crack of containment coil hardware shattering, followed by a series of dying electronic tones. "Stasis drive integrity, failing!" Lyran cried out. "The primary stabilizer core has fractured. We are losing containment." The drive's strained whine dropped into a guttural groan, then ceased. The ship went dead. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in a lurid, panicked red, casting long, dancing shadows. The view screen showed the stars, sharp again, but stationary. They were adrift, crippled, a silent teardrop lost in a sea of human noise. For a full 10-hour shift, only the sound of controlled breathing filled the bridge. Senshin broke the silence. "Damage report, Technician Lyran." Lyran's fingers trembled over his dark console. "The stasis drive is offline. The primary core shattered beyond repair. Secondary power is holding, but life support is running on minimal reserves. Long-range communications
The impact sheared off the primary array. We are, for all practical purposes, a metal coffin."
A coffin. The word hung in the bridge's silent air.
"The distress beacon,"
Senshin stated.
"Activate it."
Lyran tapped a series of commands. A small light on his console blinked green.
"Concordance distress signal automated, transmitted on all high-frequency bands. It will be difficult for it to penetrate this level of interference."
They waited. The red emergency lighting pulsed, a slow rhythm in their dying ship. An hour passed, then another. The only reply was the endless chaotic static of human space. "The interference will likely drown our signal," Kala said, her voice a faint whisper. Senshin weighed their options: wait for their air to run out, or wait for a micrometeoroid to pierce their hull. Or they could attempt the unthinkable.
"Technician Lyran,"
Senshin said, the words feeling foreign and distasteful.
"You noted that the human transmissions layer on top of each other. Is it possible to broadcast on one of their open channels?"
Lyran tilted his head.
"Freighter, to do so would announce our presence, violating the mission's core directive."
"The mission's core directive was to observe and return,"
Senshin countered, a subtle, irrefutable logic in his voice.
"The second objective is now contingent on violating the first. Is it possible?"
"Theoretically,"
Lyran conceded.
"The hardware for our standard communication suite is still functional. I would have to manually tune the modulator. It would be crude."
"Do it,"
Senshin commanded. Lyran worked for another hour, his fingers inputting command strings that bypassed layers of concordant safety protocols, forbidding this kind of open channel communication. After another hour, a new light glowed on his console.
"I have isolated a broadly used commercial frequency. It appears to be for freight hauling and logistics."
"Broadcast a standard distress call,"
Senshin ordered.
"Peaceful Class 4 vessel requiring immediate assistance. Transmit our coordinates."
Lyran sent the message, a formal, pristine request encoded with universal mathematic constants to ensure any spacefaring race could understand it. The response was almost instantaneous. A blast of static resolved into a crackling, cheerful voice overlaid with the faint sound of the same aggressive music they had heard from the racers.
"Copy that, mystery ship. Sounds like you're in a bit of a pickle. Stasis drive give up the ghost? Yeah, they have trouble with the chop out here. Hang tight, we're about 5 parsecs off your porpo. You guys need a jump, or is it a full tow job?"
The 3 Concordants stared at the speaker grill.
"Freighter,"
Kala whispered.
"what is a pickle?"
"I am unfamiliar with the term,"
Senshin admitted.
"but it appears we have a choice. We can trust to the void's silence or the human's noise. Technician, reply to them. Inform them we require a full tow job."
The human ship that arrived was a lumpy, asymmetrical collection of modules, cargo containers, and engine pods bolted together as an afterthought. Its hull was a patchwork of mismatched plates, some shining new, others scarred and rusted, covered in strange symbols and what looked like graffiti. Faded, flaking letters across its bow spelled out the vessel's designation: the Wayward Hauler. It lumbered forward, yet navigated the gravimetric currents with an ease the quiet inquiry had sorely lacked. With a series of loud metallic clangs that resonated through their own hull, a set of magnetic clamps locked onto their outer airlock.
"Their magnetic clamping system is brutish,"
Lyran reported.
"It relies on direct force, foregoing gravimetric soft links or phase dampeners. They have just grabbed us."
"They are opening our outer airlock," Kala added, watching a schematic on her screen. "Manually." A moment later, their inner airlock hissed open. A wave of new smells instantly contaminated the Inquiry's purified air, washing over the bridge: hot metal, something savory and spicy, and the warm organic scent of a living, breathing animal. Standing in the entryway was a human. He stood at an average height for his species, with a weathered face, graying hair, and a wry, knowing smile. He wore a stained jumpsuit over a plain t-shirt, his shoulders loose and weight shifted to one leg, a posture of casual relaxation so alien to Senshin it resembled a new law of physics. He took in the scene before him.
The sterile gray bridge, the pulsing red emergency lights, and the three silent, still, plated beings staring at him. He let out a low whistle.
Well, look at you,
Sal said, his voice a casual, slang-filled drawl.
You're a long way from home.
He stepped onto the bridge, his worn boots scuffing the pristine deck.
Sal Carter, captain of that heap scrap you're now magnetically engaged to. You're the one in charge, Slick?
He asked, nodding towards Senshin. Senshin remained still, cataloging the protocol violations, forced entry, informal address, the pejorative Slick.
I am Praetor Senshin, commander of this vessel,
he replied, his voice calm and measured.
We are grateful for your assistance. Praetor, huh? Fancy.
Sal grinned. He gestured behind him with a thumb.
Come over to my place. We'll settle you in, and my engineer can take a look at your busted ride. We'll have more options once we dock.
Senshin glanced at his crew. Protocol was clear. Survival superseded all other directives, even if it meant boarding a mobile scrapyard.
We accept your offer, Senshin said. Lead the way.
As they stepped through the airlock and onto the deck of the wayward hauler, the full sensory onslaught of human life met them. A small furry quadruped with floppy ears, a species Senshin's database identified as a Canis lupus familiaris, or dog, bounded toward them and let out a series of sharp percussive barks. It skidded to a halt before the three towering silent aliens sniffed at Senshin's leg plating and then trotted away. The air was thick, humid, and layered with 1,000 smells. The dominant one was a rich, spicy aroma of cooking food, underpinned by the acrid smell of welding fumes, the clean scent of engine lubricant, and something faintly sweet like overripe fruit. Senshin's internal air filter struggled, the sensory flood almost nauseating. The corridor was a cluttered mess. Tools lay on benches, wires snaked across the floor, held down with wide strips of adhesive fabric. A chaotic collage of faded photographs, technical schematics, and childish drawings of rockets and stars papered the walls. From a side corridor, a young human female, her face smudged with grease and her hair tied up in a messy bundle, lifted a welding mask. She grinned, a flash of white teeth in a grease-smudged face. "Got him, Sal!" she shouted over the lingering hiss of her torch. She looked at the concordance, her eyes wide with curiosity.
Whoa, you guys are shiny. Are those organic? Is that a calcium carbonate structure? The bonded structure is beautiful. Does it self-repair?
Lyran unconsciously cataloged her inquiries, intrigued by their technical basis despite the informal approach.
Yara, give our guests some space,
Sal said with an amused sigh.
They just had a bad day. This is my engineer and co-pilot Yara. The loud one is Scrap,
he added, pointing at the dog, who was now chewing on a piece of rubber tubing.
Come on, let's get you to the galley. You look like you could use, well, something.
He led them to a small, cluttered room that served as a combination kitchen and common area. A round table, bolted to the floor, was surrounded by mismatched chairs. Yara was already there, somehow ahead of them, and was now ladling a thick red-orange stew filled with noodles and chunks of unfamiliar vegetables into 3 bowls.
"Spicy noodle surprise,"
she announced proudly.
"Guaranteed to clear your sinuses and reboot your soul."
She placed the bowls on the table. Steam rose from them, carrying the spicy scent that permeated the ship. The 3 concordants stood stiffly, observing the offering. A measured ration of bioengineered protein gel, dispensed at scheduled intervals, met their nutritional needs. Strict protocols required extensive chemical analysis and quarantine procedures before consuming alien foodstuffs.
Our nutritional needs are met,
Senshin said formally.
Bull,
Sal said. He sat down and picked up a 2-pronged utensil.
Everybody's gotta eat. It's perfectly safe, I promise. Yara's a better cook than she is a welder, and she's a damn fine welder.
Lyran leaned forward slightly, his optical sensors analyzing the steam.
High capsaicin content. Turmeric, cumin, various complex proteins. The olfactory profile is stimulating.
Yara beamed.
See, the big guy gets it. It's good for you.
Calla watched them, her posture rigid. Her training, her entire existence, screamed at her to refuse. The offering was an alien, uncontrolled variable beyond her calculations, but the intoxicating smell promised a new sensation. Curiosity, a rebellious spark the Concordance had tried so hard to extinguish, overcame her training. Deliberately, she reached for a bowl. She picked up the strange utensil, a fork, and copied Sal's movements, spearing a cluster of noodles. She lifted it to her mouth. Sentient's posture grew even more rigid. Lyran watched her, her reaction logged by his optical sensors. Calla took the bite. Hot, savory, salty, and sweet sensations erupted all at once, a sensory overload on her tongue. For a being who had only known a diet of uniform, efficient protein gel, the experience was a revelation. Her body reacted involuntarily. A high-frequency vibration ran through her entire frame, and her plating emitted a distinct audible zing. She clamped down on the reaction, her discipline reasserting itself, but the reaction had happened. For a brief moment, her features slackened in wonder. Sal Carter just grinned.
Yeah, the noodles'll do that to you.
Sentient stared at his navigator, a dissonant frequency humming through his own plating. He had just witnessed a raw emotional outburst, a symptom of system failure, and yet a look of life sparked in Calla's eyes, a life that seemed a galaxy removed from the quiet tranquility of home. The journey to a place of repair took several days, an exercise in enduring sensory overload for the Concordance. Sal and Yara existed in a state of constant low-level chatter, punctuated by arguments about engine performance, debates over music, and easy familiar laughter. The dog, Scrap, followed them everywhere. The ship was in a perpetual state of managed decay, with Yara constantly fixing one minor system failure as another cropped up. Their life was chaotic and somehow undeniably functional. Their destination was a place called Junker's Orbit. It defied the Concordance sense of a station, a marvel of pristine engineering and silent flowing transit. A sprawling chaotic accretion of asteroids, derelict ship hulls, and modular habitats were lashed together with cables, docking tubes, and what looked like tenacity alone. A swarm of smaller ships buzzed around it like metal insects, and the entire structure pulsed with light and noise. The station was a multicultural, vibrant mess, the polar opposite of a Concordance orbital's silent, monochromatic perfection. Sal expertly guided the wayward hauler into a docking bay that looked more like a cave carved into a chunk of iron-rich rock. The moment the airlock opened, the station's noise flooded in, the clang of hammers, the shouts of merchants, the sizzle of cooking food, and a dozen different kinds of music all playing at once.
All right,
Sal said, stretching.
Yeah, all right, you and Lyran go take a look at the inquiry's drive. I gotta go talk to a guy about a new plasma conduit. Prater, you stick with me. We'll keep you from getting lost or sold for parts.
Yara nodded.
And I gotta call in a favor with the station's maintenance chief, Ortiz. His crew owes me for unscrambling their network last shift cycle. Should get us priority on a new core.
Sentient followed Sal into the station proper. The main concourse was a flowing current of species, a torrent of life where beings from Concordance files mingled with dozens he had never seen. They bartered, argued, and laughed with an ease that spoke of a society with a more fluid social structure. Stalls lining the walls sold everything from starship parts to sizzling street food, from tailored clothing to live, squawking winged creatures in cages. To Sentient, the scene was a chaotic but living display. As they walked, a familiar sight caught Sentient's attention. A Concordance stood behind a stall that was billowing fragment steam. He was shorter, stockier than Sentient, and his plating was a dull, matte gray, but Sentient recognized his kind at once. But this Concordant was in constant motion, handing bowls of steaming food to a line of customers, and he was laughing, a deep, resonant sound of genuine amusement shared with a patron whose three upper limbs handled its payment while a fourth steadied its bowl. Sentient stopped rigid. A Concordant, living here. engaging in manual labor, expressing open emotion?
Sal Carter, Senshin said, his voice strained. I must speak with that individual.
Sal followed his gaze.
Oh, Kai? Sure. Good noodles, though Yara's are better. His real business is reverse engineering your people's tech. Sells custom mods to freighter crews. It's how he keeps the lights on.
Senshin approached the stall, his tall, imposing figure parting the crowd. The concordant food vendor looked up, his laughter catching in his throat. He widened his eyes in recognition, and for a moment, the old ingrained discipline took over. He straightened, his posture becoming rigid, his hands instinctively seeking a formal position at his sides he'd abandoned years ago.
Traitor,
the vendor said, his voice a strained echo of formal tones.
You are concordant,
Senshin stated.
Designation 5 Epsilon 4, Chief Science Officer of Scout Ship Silent Witness, lost 5 years ago.
The vendor's posture relaxed. He sighed, a human sound of resignation.
That designation is irrelevant. My name is Kai. Kai is outside Concordance designations,
Senshin said, the blatant heresy short-circuiting his logic.
Correct,
Kai agreed. He gestured at his stall, at the noisy, messy station around them.
There's a lot out here outside the Concordance. I chose the name myself. I liked the sound of it.
You are a defector, Senshin said, the word feeling like a physical expulsion.
You abandoned your mission, your crew.
My crew is fine,
Kai said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice.
Our navigator Sella helps run the station's traffic control. Our engineer is the most sought-after stasis drive specialist in 3 systems. Our ship was never lost, Praetor. We arrived.
Senshin stared at him, the foundations of his understanding fracturing. The lost ships, they had found a new home.
Why?
Senshin asked, the single word carrying the weight of 1,000 questions.
Why would you trade the Concordance's tranquility, order, and perfection for this?
He gestured at the chaos, the noise, the unadulterated mess of it all. Kai followed his gesture, a slow smile spreading across his face. His expression was one of weary contentment.
Because of the noodles,
Kai said. Senshin blinked.
The noodles.
And the arguments,
Kai continued, his voice gaining strength.
And the stupid music, and the feeling of grease on my hands when I fix the stall's heating element. You see, Praetor, the Concordance offers a peaceful, empty life. A silent, perfect gray existence where others make all choices for you. It's safe, it's orderly, and it's not living.
He leaned forward and he dropped his voice to a conspiratorial whisper.
Out here, life is messy. It's difficult. I fail, Praetor, all the time. My last batch of broth was too salty. Last week, I trusted a supplier who sold me shoddy power converters. These are my failures. I get to own them, just like I get to own my successes. I chose this stall. I chose this life. I chose my own name. Can you say the same?
Senshin remained silent. He looked at Kai, a being who had cast off the perfection of their society for the freedom to make the salty broth, and for the first time in his life, an unfamiliar sensation tightened his plating, something he could only identify as envy. The sensation was terrifying, exhilarating, a flaw, a choice. In the docking bay, Lyran observed Yara's diagnostic methods. His internal processors flagged a dozen violations of engineering principles, even as he logged the undeniable results, where he would have run a full-spectrum energy analysis and a subatomic scan on the fractured core. Yara gave the main drive housing a solid kick.
Sometimes,
she explained, patting the metal casing,
the contact points get sticky. You just have to persuade them.
Lyran's plating tightened.
That defies engineering principle. That is percussive maintenance. It is a pejorative term for a reason.
Yeah, well, sometimes it works,
Yara retorted cheerfully. She had already pried open the access panel, her tools moving with a quickness Lyran had to admit was impressive.
Okay, so the main core is toast. Powdered, actually. A concordance spec core like this is unattainable out here. It'd be easier to find a unicorn that excretes gold.
Unicorns are mythological creatures,
Lyran said flatly.
Exactly.
Yara grinned.
So we gotta improvise.
Lyran watched as she worked. She rerouted power conduits with mismatched wiring. She used a sticky, hardening resin to patch a hairline fracture in a coolant pipe and hummed along to loud, aggressive music playing from a portable speaker she'd set up. Yet he had to acknowledge her results. Piece by piece, she was bringing the ship's auxiliary systems back to life. A critical power relay on the station's docking clamp failed, plunging their bay into the same red emergency lighting Lyran had grown to loathe. Yara swore colorfully.
Damn it! Primary insulator on the clamp's power feed just fried. Station's maintenance was a week away from servicing it. We're stuck without it. I lack a replacement that can handle that kind of load.
Lyran looked at the fried relay, then at the specifications Yara had pulled up on a flex screen. The insulator's unique, curved shape designed for a cramped space presented the problem. An unorthodox idea formed in Lyran's logical mind.
The human vessel. He began thinking out loud. It possesses a food resequencer, a device that manipulates organic molecules.
The food synth? Yeah. Sal is real proud of it. Can make 38 different kinds of noodles.
Yara said, missing his point.
If I can access its base programming,
Lyran continued, his speech quickening with intellectual excitement,
I can alter the molecular templates. Instead of proteins and carbohydrates, I can instruct it to assemble a polymer chain. An insulating high-temperature polymer, I can use it to fabricate a new insulator in the exact shape we require.
Yara stared at him, her jaw slightly agape.
You want to print a custom starship part out of the noodle machine?
She broke into a wide, brilliant grin.
Lyran, you magnificent old being! That is the most beautifully insane, stupidly clever thing I have ever heard. I love it. Let's go.
They spent the next hour working side by side. Lyran rewrote the resequencer's code with logical elegance. Yara jury-rigged a direct power line to give the machine the extra energy it needed for polymer synthesis. An hour later, the food synthesizer hummed and extruded a perfect custom-shaped insulator that was still warm to the touch. As Yara went to install it, another alarm flared on the inquiry's console.
Ah, crap,
she said.
Bypassing that relay just fried a secondary circuit board. A simple one, but I lack a spare.
Lyran examined the board. The break was clean. A simple connection would fix it.
The repair will require a conductive material of a specific length and minimal resistance.
Yara rummaged in her toolbox. She pulled out a small coil of reddish-brown metal.
How about a bit of copper wire?
Lyran stared at the wire. It was an insultingly simple conductor, lacking shielding, energy dampening, or phase alignment. Just a wire.
Yeah,
Yara said, already stripping the ends.
But it's a stupid but effective trick. Watch.
With 2 quick, deft dabs of soldering iron, she bridged the fried circuit. The alarm on the console went silent. The board was functional. Lyran looked from the elegantly fabricated insulator to the simple copper wire. Perfection versus function. In a chaotic universe, function often won. A new engineering paradigm formed in his thoughts, one that embraced improvisation as a vital tool. While Lyran was having his engineering epiphany, Kala was at a brightly lit arcade on the station's main concourse, a place filled with flashing lights and the electronic screams of simulated death and victory. A human teenager with spiky blue hair and a cocky grin, who introduced himself as Zeke, had noticed her staring at a zero-G flight simulator.
Want to give it a try, Shiny?
The teen had goaded.
It's a classic atmospheric racer, the Red Comet run. Bet you can't finish the course.
Stung by the challenge, Kala accepted. She slid into the simulator's cockpit. The controls were archaic, physical joysticks and pedals, but the principles were the same. She was a concordance navigator. Her skills were mathematically perfect. The simulation began. She was in a small, agile racing craft, streaking through a canyon of red rock under a pale blue sky. She applied her training, calculating the perfect vectors, the optimal angles of approach for each turn. She flew with pristine geometric accuracy, and she was losing. Zeke, in the simulator next to her, was flying with a wild abandon. He slammed his ship through tight corners, scraped his wings against canyon walls to maintain speed, and took risks that Kala's every calculation screamed were suicidal. And he was pulling ahead.
You're thinking too much!
Yelled over the simulator's comms, his voice filled with laughter.
You gotta feel the drift! Let the ship talk to you!
Feel the drift? A ship was a machine, a collection of systems to control. It communicated through data alone. Yet, on the screen, Zeke's ship danced through the canyon while hers moved like a brick. The simulation ended. Her score fell below the leaderboard's threshold. Zeke's was at the top. He clapped her on the shoulder as she exited the cockpit.
Hey, pretty good for a first-timer,
he said, his earlier mockery gone, replaced with a genuine friendliness.
You got the technique down, you just gotta learn to let go a little.
Let go. The phrase echoed in her mind. All her life, her teachers taught her to hold on, to control, to suppress. The idea of letting go was terrifying. But watching Zeke start another simulation, his face alight with the joy of flight, she remembered that same spark she'd felt in the nebula. The joy of improvisation, of intuition, of feeling the drift. The quiet hum of the newly repaired docking clamp was a satisfying sound. Repairs on the Inquiry were proceeding. Senshin was in the galley of the Wayward Hauler when a sound severed the station's background chatter. A concordance transmission, pristine, clear, and perfectly dispassionate, displayed over the ship's main comm unit. Sal looked up, an eyebrow raised. This is the Concordance reintegration vessel, Unwavering Path, to the crew of the Quiet Inquiry. The automated voice intoned. Your tertiary distress signal has been received. We were already on patrol near the anomaly's border and have diverted to your vector. We will arrive to restore your tranquility and return you to the Harmony. Cease all interaction with local anomalous life forms. Prepare for retrieval. A chill passed through Senshin, Kala, and Lyran, who had just returned from the docking bay. The voice was so calm, so reassuring, but after their time in human space, the words sounded wrong. Reintegration. Restore your tranquility. It sounded like a threat disguised as a rescue. The transmission continued. A review of your vessel's tertiary log indicates multiple protocol violations and exposure to destabilizing sensory inputs. As a result, the Concordance has issued a corrective mandate. Navigator Kala, designation 4 Theta 9, will undergo emotional recalibration upon retrieval to ensure a swift return to operational harmony. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. Emotional recalibration. The sterile clinical term described a brutal process. The neurological wipes scoured away any budding traces of individuality, of emotion, of rebellion. The procedure was the Concordance's ultimate solution for a flawed component, a death of the self. A violent tremor shook Kala's frame before she suppressed it. She looked at Senshin, her eyes wide. Her appeal was more than a subordinate petitioning a commander. It was one living being pleading with another for her life. We will prepare for retrieval, Senshin announced, his voice flat, his gaze fixed on the far wall of the galley. He was reverting to his training, to the dictates of the Concordance. The unwavering path was coming. Order was being restored. No. The single word, though quiet, silenced the room. It came from Kala. She stood straighter, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I will not be recalibrated, she said, her voice shaking but firm. I will not let them scrape my mind clean because I liked the taste of noodles. The admission felt monumentous. A final, irrevocable step. I would rather be a junk hauler. I would rather be a nothing out here than a perfect, empty something back there. I refuse the order, Praetor. Senshin turned his head slowly to face her. This was mutiny. His duty was clear. He was to restrain her and hand her over to the unwavering path for correction. Before he could speak, Lyron stepped forward, positioning himself slightly beside Calla.
Praetor,
The old technician said, his voice a low rumble.
Navigator Calla's reaction, while a breach of protocol, has merit. Furthermore, my own analysis of human engineering is incomplete. The number of unpredictable variables requires extensive long-term in-person study. To return now would be to abandon invaluable data. I must respectfully support her refusal.
Senshin now faced a rebellion on two fronts. His navigator swayed by sensation, his engineer seduced by chaotic data, his system of belief fractured. He felt more adrift now than when his ship had lost its drive. He turned and walked out of the galley in silence. He found himself in a small observation lounge at the front of the ship, a single large viewport looking out at the swirling chaos of Junker's orbit. He stood there for a long time, watching the endless, messy dance of ships. Footsteps sounded behind him. Sal Carter entered. The human came to stand beside him, looking out at the same view. He held two mugs and offered one to Senshin. It was filled with a dark, steaming liquid.
Coffee,
Sal said.
It's bitter. You'll hate it.
Senshin ignored the mug. They stood in silence for several minutes.
They are coming to restore order,
Senshin said, his voice a faint whisper.
It is my duty to comply.
Yep,
Sal said, taking a sip from his mug.
I got the wayward holler about 20 years ago,
Sal said conversationally, his gaze distant.
Before that, I was a junior executive for a logistics corporation on one of Saturn's moons. Good job. Safe, predictable. My flight path was all mapped out. Promotion at 35, senior partnership at 50, retirement at 65. A nice, quiet apartment with a nice, quiet view of Saturn.
He took another sip of coffee.
Every morning I would wake up, put on the same gray suit, and I would feel this weight right here.
He tapped his chest.
Like I was sinking. One day I just walked away. I cashed out my pension, what little there was, and bought this ship. She was a wreck then, even worse than she is now, called the Lost Cause. I renamed her.
He turned to look at Senshin, his wry smile softened by a deep, quiet sincerity.
It's been hard. I've been broke more times than I can count. I've been shot at, swindled, and stranded. This ship is a constant headache. But every morning I wake up and I get to decide which headache I want to deal with. It's hard work, but at least the mistakes are mine.
He finished his coffee and placed the empty mug on a console. He looked at Senshin.
Your people are coming, Praetor,
Sal said softly.
You have to decide if you're going back with them.
He left Senshin alone with his thoughts. Senshin stood in the silence, the human's words echoing. His gaze fell upon the mug of coffee Sal had left. He reached out, his fingers hovering over the ceramic, feeling its residual warmth before pulling back. Then he turned and walked toward the galley. Senshin returned to the galley. Calla and Lyron stood waiting, their fates hanging on his decision. Sal and Yara were there too, leaning against a counter, offering their silent support. He looked at his crew. He saw the terror and defiance in Calla's eyes. He saw the quiet, intellectual resolve on Lyron's face. He thought of Kai, the defector who had found happiness in failure. He thought of Sal's story, of the quiet weight of a life of dictated choices. He made his decision.
The Concordance believes that human technology is brutish and insufficient.
Senshin began, his voice taking on the sharp analytical tone of a strategist.
They believe their systems are superior because they are perfect. They are about to discover that perfection is a weakness.
A slow grin spread across Yara's face. Are you saying what I think you're saying, Praetor?
I am saying,
Senshin declared, his gaze locking with hers,
that we require a plan. A dumb, human plan.
Yara's grin widened. She slammed her hand down on the galley table.
Okay, I have an idea. It's stupendously stupid, so It'll probably work.
She pulled up a schematic of Junker's orbit on the table's holographic projector, a massive, dense field of scrap metal. The junk that gave the place its name surrounded the station.
The station uses these,
she said, highlighting a series of massive structures ringing the habitat.
industrial-grade electromagnets. They use them to pull in valuable salvage and push away dangerous debris. They are incredibly powerful.
Lyron leaned in, his mind already working.
The unwavering path stasis drive, like ours, relies on a perfectly stable and predictable space-time environment. It compensates for minor gravimetric fluctuations, but it is highly sensitive.
So what if we make the fluctuations less minor?
Yara continued, her excitement growing.
What if we use the station's magnets to agitate the entire scrap field, turning it into a giant chaotic storm of microgravity spikes, thousands of them all at once?
Senshin saw it instantly. A Concordance ship would interpret that as a catastrophic system failure. Its drive would try to compensate for every single fluctuation simultaneously. The processing load would be instantaneous and overwhelming. It would force an emergency shutdown.
Exactly!
Yara cheered.
We create a trap, a big, dumb, magnetic trap.
Sal folded his arms, a look of grudging respect on his face.
It's a hell of a plan, but how do we get their shiny new ship to fly right into it?
All eyes turned to Kala. A slow smile touched her lips.
I'll be the bait, she said.
Kala was at the helm of the wayward hauler. The controls felt sluggish and heavy compared to the Inquiry, but she embraced the challenge, flying by intuition over calculation. The unwavering path had arrived. The magnificent ship, larger than the Inquiry, had a hull of seamless shining white. A silent purpose guided its movements, a predator gliding into a new hunting ground. The vessel ignored the station's traffic control and broadcast its intentions on a universal frequency.
Stand aside. Concordance operations in progress. We are retrieving our lost assets.
Showtime, kid,
Sal said over the comm from the co-pilot's seat. Kala nodded. She pushed the throttle forward, and the clumsy freighter lurched out of the docking bay, its engines roaring in protest. She flew toward the densest part of the scrap field, her flight path a wildly erratic, drunken-looking wobble. Her flying defied every concordance principle she had ever learned. On the bridge of the unwavering path, the concordant captain watched her progress with disdain. Her maneuvers were chaotic, barbaric, a clear sign of emotional contamination.
She is attempting to evade us in the debris field,
the captain noted.
Helm, lay in an intercept course, match her trajectory, bring us alongside.
The unwavering path banked gracefully and surged forward. They would choose the most direct path. Senshin had predicted it, the core of Concordance pursuit tactics, overwhelming accuracy and predictability. In a humming maintenance control room deep inside Junker's orbit, Lyron and Yara had company. A portly, sweating man named Ortiz, the station's maintenance chief, watched them with a wary eye. Yara, relying on the favor she was owed, had sold him a story about the Inquiry's drive causing dangerous feedback in the docking clamp's magnetic field. They needed to run a stabilizer diagnostic, and Lyron was her visiting specialist.
Okay, almost there,
Yara said, tapping a console. She surreptitiously opened a coolant valve on an adjacent system. A cloud of harmless, vaporous steam hissed out.
Ah, scrap, Ortiz. I need a bypass spanner for that valve. The red one? And locker C5. Now, before it freezes the line.
Ortiz grumbled, but lumbered off down the corridor.
That gives us 90 seconds tops,
Yara said, her demeanor shifting instantly to sharp focus.
The emitters are scheduled for a diagnostic cycle now. That's our window. We can access the diagnostic mode, bypass the safety protocols, and pump a full power surge right into them.
The energy feedback will be catastrophic,
Lyron noted, his hands moving quickly over holographic interference he had jury-rigged.
It will fuse every control board in this sector.
Yeah,
Yara grinned, holding a massive insulated power cable.
Isn't it great? A one-shot deal.
Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Wayward Hauler, Senshin stood behind Kala, his eyes fixed on the 3D battleship projected over the main console, his mind calculating Concordant's strategy.
They are closing, he said. They will attempt to disable our engines with a targeted energy pulse in precisely 45 seconds. They will position themselves 20 degrees off our starboard engine block to do it. Kala, on my mark, execute a full lateral thrust, 180-degree roll, and burn retrograde. You must time it perfectly.
The maneuver should tear a ship like the Wayward Hauler apart.
You got it, Captain.
Kala replied, a new title for her old commander. From the co-pilot's seat, Sal gave a slow, approving nod.
Lyran, Yara, are you in position?
Senshin asked over the comm.
Ready to pull the switch,
came Yara's excited reply.
30 seconds.
Senshin counted down. The white shape of the unwavering path grew larger in their viewport, a sterile specter of death.
20. 10. 5. 4. 3. 2. Mark!
Kala slammed her hands on the controls. The freighter groaned, metal screaming in protest, but it responded. It rolled and spun, its main engines firing in a direction that defied their design, presenting its armored belly to the Concordant ship just as a disabling beam shot past, missing them by meters.
Now, Yara, now!
Senshin commanded. Yara Nowak grabbed the activation control. The control was a massive physical lever, salvaged from an ancient cargo hauler, painted bright red with a skull and crossbones stenciled on it for good measure. With a war cry, she slammed it downwards. Deep within the station, a colossal surge of power, diverted from the main reactors, hit the electromagnetic emitters. For a moment, all was still. Then, the entire scrap field, miles wide and thousands of feet deep, came alive. 1,000,000 tons of derelict plating, twisted grinders, and dead engine blocks convulsed. A silent, terrifying tidal wave of metal, each piece with its own tiny, chaotic gravitational field, rose up and surged inwards, directly towards the unwavering path. The Concordant ship's advanced drive, designed for the elegant silence of space, suddenly faced 1,000,000 simultaneous contradictory gravitational inputs. It tried to compensate. Alarms screamed across its pristine bridge. The drive, tasked with an unreal paradoxical computation, overloaded. From the viewport of the Wayward Hauler, they watched as the lights on the unwavering path flickered violently, the ship's engine sputtered, the powerful hum of its stasis drive died. With a final pathetic whine, the tidal wave of scrap metal engulfed it, a cloud of metallic locusts swarming the helpless giant. The unwavering path was dead in the water, silenced by the chaos it had come to tame. They left before watching the fallout, as the stranded crew of the unwavering path began their own uncomfortable introduction to the noisy, messy reality of human space. The Wayward Hauler quietly slipped away, melting back into the chaotic stream of frontier traffic. A day later, they were in the calm of deep space. A quiet camaraderie settled between Senshin, Kala, and Lyran as they gathered on the bridge with Sal and Yara. The 5 of them, 2 species from opposite ends of the philosophical spectrum, now a single, unlikely crew. The upper part of Senshin's facial plating had retracted, revealing the face beneath. The face beneath was humanoid in structure, with smooth, pale skin and large, dark eyes. It was a face capable of expression.
Where to now, Captain?
Yara asked, looking at Sal. Sal, however, looked at Senshin.
Not my call. It's a big universe. Where do you folks want to start your new messy lives?
Senshin looked at Kala, then at Lyran. He saw the future in their eyes, a universe of choices stretching before them. He turned to Yara.
All our lives, we have heard stories of your people, tales of chaos, of volatility. Your space is an anomaly, your history a warning. Where did it all begin? Show us the source of the chaos. Show us your home world.
Yara's face lit up with a brilliant, proud smile. She tapped a few commands into the nav computer. The main view screen, which showed a standard star field, dissolved into a detailed chart of a nearby spiral arm. With a final tap, she zoomed in on a single, unremarkable yellow star. One of its planets was highlighted. She brought the image up on the main screen. The planet was a swirling, beautiful marble of deep blues, stark whites, and earthy greens, a jewel of vibrant life hanging in the blackness of space.
There it is,
Yara said, her voice filled with a reverence that Senshin was beginning to understand.
the big blue marble, cradle of civilization, birthplace of bad music, spicy noodles, and stupendously stupid effective plans. Home world.
Senshin stared at the image. 1,000 myths and a lifetime of cautionary tales crashed down upon him. This was the heart of the anomaly, the source, the place from which all this wonderful, terrifying, beautiful chaos had sprung. His voice, when he spoke, was a whisper.
Wait, that's Earth?